veteran from New Mexico, Ms. Leger Fernandez, is recognized for any questions she may have for the panel.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair and Ranking Member, for your work together. You know, the first briefing you had in Ukraine and the several briefings that I went to, I was struck by how well the two of you worked together and how you were focused on our national security. And I do appreciate the way in which you have described that national security has many elements and many threats to it, and you are trying to address them in this bill. And one of the biggest resources, as we know, is our actual service members. And it's not enough to constantly be thanking them for their service. We actually have to provide them with the resources they need, which you're doing with the increase in pay. And importantly, the increase in what you need to be able to serve. So from the housing to child care centers. I represent a very rural district. My biggest city is 80,000 people.
I've been to your district.
Yeah, you've been to my district. I love my district. I think it is the most beautiful of all districts in the country. But like many rural districts, it hosts bases where they place Air Force bases where you could have planes flying over and there's nobody complaining, right? And so New Mexico has 3 Air Force bases precisely for that reason. We also have both Sandia and the Los Alamos National Labs. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions because I think they're important to my district, but they're important to all of the rural districts that we see. And one of those is indeed the importance of supporting the quality of life issues on housing, on mental health, and on child care. And I think that you are trying to do that in this bill. And can you actually set out why it's that important to make sure we have that housing? In Clovis, for example, which is in that's the Cannon Air Force Base, the need for more and better housing, and there's space for it, and how this bill actually does that, and where we might need to do even better. If you could both address that.
We do in this bill deal with all of those, but I also want you to know this, not just this bill. We are very serious about this quality of life issue, and starting in June, we have set up a task force on quality of life, bipartisan, to come forward with a package of reforms that we can put in next year's NDAA that go much further than what we've been doing so far. You know, I'm really proud of the 5.2% pay increase. I'm proud of what we're doing to relieve housing costs. I'm proud of what we're doing in here to relieve child care expenses, a whole host of things. But they don't go nearly far enough to value service members the way we think they should be valued to deal with the recruitment and retention problems that we're having in all the services right now. So I want you to know that while we're very proud of what we put in here and that we think it goes a long way, you're going to see big leaps in next year's bill, but they're going to be thoughtful, and that's why we're taking 6 months. And we waited till after the NDAA committee process and all our hearings were done for the task force to start its work. It started right before we left for the recess, so that we do get a thoughtful report by the end of the year that will deal with the broader concerns that we have on quality of life. So I would urge you that if you think of things that you would like to see addressed, make sure that that task force is informed about that, because we want it to be comprehensive. We want people to see a career in the military as a career worth spending their life on, and not just the service member, but their family. We want their family to feel valued and their children to want to stay in that. Because the fact is, historically, we've gotten our biggest segment of service members from military families. Mm-hmm. This is not the case now. This is the first time in my lifetime that military families are not recommending a career in the military to their children. We've got to reverse that. So I just want you to understand, we hear you, we're dealing with it, but there's a lot more coming.
You know, and on that point, I would also say that in discussion of the importance of diversity and not seeing it as something that undermines our national security, but rather that it strengthens our national security to have a military force that reflects America is really important. New Mexico has the largest percentage of veterans, because it turns out that Native Americans and Hispanos, join the military at greater numbers, and therefore when they come home, we have such a large number. And I think that if you could speak to that, Chairman Smith, of how do you see the importance of diversity, including both women and then the diverse Americans that exist here, maybe from both the chair and the ranking member Smith.
Sure. First of all, I agree completely with everything Mike said about quality of life issues and our focus on the committee. That's why, our opening statements, that's what both of us led with, and it's the most important thing we do. Military construction contributes to that, but then also our support for the pay, benefits, bonuses, everything that goes into the package that helps men and women be able to serve. We're very focused on that, and I look forward to what the task force has to say. I gave a fairly impassioned plea for diversity in my opening remarks, which I will not repeat. But the bottom line is, we have to recruit from the entire country. We have to reach into all communities. We cannot be excluding women or gay people or trans people. And also historically, I know people of color have served in the military. And frankly, most people of color that I've talked to about this say that, the military was relatively egalitarian. But when you look at the promotions, it just, you don't have, an adequate reflection at the highest levels of our military. So I think, having some effort to say, hey, how are we going to go out into communities that have been either discriminated against or marginalized in the past and make sure that they feel welcome, all right? Now, you can have bad diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. I am fully aware of that, and I have seen them. But what I don't want this bill to do is to eliminate it entirely. Which is what is being talked about and what a number of the amendments do, because it misses the point of the fact that we need to affirmatively recruit in those communities that have not historically felt welcome and treated fairly, not just within the military, but within society more broadly. It's a way to make sure you're reaching everybody that you bring in a fair and equitable way. And that's what I hope we'll do in a reasonable way. Look, like any program, depending on, you want to have oversight, you think there's something going wrong with the DEI program, let's talk about it. But that basic principle that it matters to do that outreach to diverse communities, I don't understand the argument that says we shouldn't be doing that, not when we have to recruit. And the final point, I know, and the chairman's not wrong that we are not as strong in terms of, military families saying go into the military. I don't think the chairman meant to say that nobody who's serving in the military is recommending to their family members to join. Yeah.
It's just smaller than it's ever been.
It's just down lower than it should, and we got to look at that aspect of the problem too. What's going on, and that's what hopefully this task force will help us do.
Thank you. And Chair Rogers, do you also agree with the impassioned plea that we heard from Ranking Member Smith about the importance of diversity in the military and making sure that women, for example, have access to reproductive health care?
I think that the military is a shining example of diversity for every organization in the country. It's been a leader in that area for decades.
And you want to keep it that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other piece that is of I think, great concern is that sometimes military bases sometimes have some messes that they've left behind, and we need to clean those up. And as you know, we have everything from the PFAS problems that need to be addressed, as well as legacy cleanup. In New Mexico, we exploded the first atomic bomb. We are still not compensating those who suffered from the fallout from that atomic bomb at Trinity. But we also have a lot of legacy waste that we need to do in New Mexico and in places around the country. We didn't know I don't think at all in any way was it intentional. But now that we know what we know, that it needs to be cleaned up. And can you actually maybe both touch on that and how you see this bill doing that and whether you think there needs to be a bit more on that?
I'm not aware of anything extraordinary that we're doing with UXO and cleanup issues in this bill that's not already been ongoing. I don't know of any additional steps we've taken.
Yeah, no, the only thing is that the portion of the budget of our bill that we don't usually talk about is the energy portion.
Yes.
And that's where I think that's, I don't know, $40 billion. I'm wrong. It could be off there. But when you see the gap and we say there's an $886 billion defense budget and then someone else says it's $850, that gap is what's going to the Department of Energy. And there's a lot of different pieces to that. but a big piece of it is cleanup. Hanford is in my state, not in my district, but in my state, and we work on that legacy issue. They're building a vitrification plant to deal with that waste. So yes, it is something that, you know, our Strategic Forces Subcommittee pays attention to and is very focused on those cleanup needs.
Yeah, and I think it really is key. And the last point is that, you know, the quantum applications, that it's once again dealing with the importance of using the latest technology. New Mexico Sandia Labs is involved in that as part of the co-leader. You haven't actually gotten to that, but that point, you said, Ranking Member Smith, about being at the forefront of the newest technologies and the role that I think that can play, because it's also true that some of that work has spin-offs that is of civilian importance, and to remember that. And, you know, that's what we deal with in New Mexico, is making sure that we capture both sides of it, that there's both non-military use for some of these technologies and everything. We don't want, you know, we don't want certain weapons that are military style to be out and about, but we do want that flow that can come. That when we are investing in these things, it could be for multi-purposes. So thank you very much for all of the collaboration that you have, and look forward to seeing what kind of amendments we get in here and whether they offer our ability to pass something that makes sense or not. So thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.